When standard business applications pass user prompts directly to public large language models, they create a direct data stream that bypasses the secure enterprise perimeter. Multiply that single connection by hundreds of isolated internal AI initiatives. Each development team independently wires their own external model connections and manages their own API keys. This architecture guarantees two critical failures: unscrubbed protected health information leaking out of the network, and shadow IT credentials scattering across the organization. Traditional firewalls evaluate packet origins, but they cannot read the semantic context of an LLM prompt. Scaling generative AI safely requires a unified, unbypassable architectural chokepoint that evaluates the data itself. At Kaiser Permanente, that chokepoint is NexusOS. It is the mandatory, enterprise-grade enablement layer for all large language model interactions. Its primary function is to physically decouple the internal business application from the external model, enforcing automated safety and compliance on every single prompt. This reference architecture diagram illustrates exactly how that decoupling works. It maps the complete enterprise AI control plane, showing the strict barrier placed between internal enterprise workloads and external model endpoints. Written governance policies cannot stop a data leak at runtime. Preventing breaches requires embedding those policies directly into the network routing layer. A common misconception in enterprise software is that if an employee logs in using single sign-on, their subsequent data requests to an external LLM provider are inherently secure. NexusOS intentionally breaks that direct user-to-model connection. Looking at the top left of the diagram, the end user authenticates via SSO directly into the enterprise workload. That authentication relationship stops at the business application. The user's individual credentials never reach NexusOS. Instead, the application itself registers with the platform during onboarding to receive a unique identifier called an App ID. When an interaction occurs, the enterprise application initiates a secure REST API call to the NexusOS API endpoint. It authenticates the payload solely using its App ID rather than the individual user's identity. This app-to-app proxy model removes the human user's identity from the external transaction entirely. It physically eliminates the risk of individual credential leakage or unmonitored backdoor access. Once authenticated at the gateway, the API request payload moves deeper into the control plane, arriving at the AI trust and governance layer. The primary enforcement mechanism operating within this boundary is the NexusOS Content Safety Service. This service automatically scans every inbound prompt, evaluating with text specifically for protected health information and personally identifiable information. If sensitive data is detected, the payload is actively redacted and scrubbed before the request is allowed to proceed further. Application developers cannot turn off, bypass, or alter this safety service. It is permanently enforced across all LLM traffic. By executing this redaction directly at the API gateway, a theoretical compliance rule becomes an unavoidable technical reality. Following sanitization, the prompt drops into the model routing layer for egress out to the external provider. NexusOS uses its own centrally managed platform credentials to invoke approved models, such as the GPT-5.x series. Because the platform handles the handshake, internal application teams never hold direct API keys. After generation, the model's response travels back through the system. It takes a mandatory return path through the governance layer for post-execution checks. Here, the platform applies hallucination checks and leakage detection, while routing all prompt and response telemetry through Langsmith for permanent enterprise observability. Notice the block in the top right of the diagram. These are the application's unique cognitive resources, and they are deliberately excluded from the central model routing layer. Workflows requiring retrieval-augmented generation, vector embeddings, and memory management are provisioned independently for each specific workload. Decoupling a specific application's knowledge grounding from the central compliance routing allows engineering teams to iterate rapidly on their own code without ever modifying the strict data security perimeter. A secure API gateway only protects the data flowing through it. It cannot evaluate whether a specific use case should exist in the first place. To bridge that gap, every application must clear a mandatory 7-step onboarding pathway before it is allowed to connect to the NexusOS production environment. Gate 1 secures initial strategic alignment. The initiative must secure formal endorsement from its specific organizational AI council. Gates 2 and 3 trigger simultaneous technical reviews. Enterprise architecture provides pattern guidance, while the Technology Risk Office evaluates the security controls. Gate 5 is the Responsible AI Risk Review. This step coordinates oversight from multiple legal entities spanning internal, external, and government compliance domains. To pass this gate, the application team must submit and defend a comprehensive model card, detailing exactly how their project aligns with healthcare regulations and ethical standards. Gate 6 represents the ultimate production sign-off, granted by the Architecture Review Board. This rigid pipeline ensures that the organization's legal and ethical scrutiny precisely matches the technical rigor hard-coded into the software gateway. Looking at the entire NexusOS ecosystem, the technical architecture and the governance pipeline operate as a single unified system. Scaling generative AI across a healthcare enterprise requires strict separation between application logic and external model invocation. The platform executes this by abstracting credential management away from the developer and hard-coding data redaction at the gateway. It enforces those technical achievements with mandatory cross-functional checks from enterprise architecture, risk, and legal counsels. By centralizing traffic and mandating rigorous human oversight, NexusOS provides the exact friction necessary to ensure that technical innovation never outpaces patient safety.